guys, welcome to the top 20 books that I read in 2024. These aren't all necessarily books that released in 2024. They're just books that I read in 2024 that I really enjoyed. And they are in no particular order. So with that, I'll go ahead and start at the top and work my way down. I guess if they are in any order, it's probably mostly by like the order I read them in throughout the year. The first book I read and really enjoyed was Divinity 36, which is the first book in the Tinkered Star Song series by Gail Carriger. This is a science fiction series about a group of teens that kind of do a multimedia singing artistry thing to help kind of bring joy and peace to the world. There's a lot more that goes on there, but it is kind of about that. I thought it was really well done. It was very much like cozy science fiction. I really enjoyed the characters in it and the story and how unique it was. The second book on my list is Divine Rivals, which is the first book in the Layers of the Enchantment series by Rebecca Ross. This is a historical fantasy, kind of an alternate history set in like a World War I-esque era. I really enjoyed this a lot. It's about a young woman and a young man who end up becoming reporters on the war front. Little did they know they've been using like a magical armoire to communicate with letters. Well, it ends up they think it's the armoire, but anyways, that's for that book. But it's very well done. A little bit of a romance in there, a lot of action and adventure, as well as just some interesting commentary on war in general. In kind of a similar theme, book 3 was The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. This was, again, another historical, I'd say more like a magical realism rather than flat out fantasy, about a young woman who survives. She was a nurse at the front. She comes back to like heal, ends up being in Canada for the explosion of the big warship there, the accidental explosion, and I'm forgetting the name of the boat in the port. But then her brother goes missing, so she goes back to the war front to find her brother and ends up in some kind of strange magical realism things while she's trying to hunt him down. Some of these I read probably where I was, so hopefully I'm doing a good job of summing them up. Fourth book I read and really enjoyed in 2024 was The 13th Hour, which is book 1 in the Cruel God series by Trudy Skies. This is kind of a steampunk themed world where I believe there's 12 gods and 12 realms, but then in the middle of all of that, there's a city called Chime where no one is beholden to any of the gods. So that's where people will come if they want to live outside of the gods' control. And this was pretty well done. I really enjoyed the world building and the characters, and it was just really interesting. I read the second book and I didn't like it quite as much, and I haven't read the third book yet, but I did really enjoy the first book and how it set this world up. All right, book 5 I really enjoyed in 2024 is A Pirate's Life for Tea. This is the second book in the Tomes in Tea series by Rebecca Thorne. This is very much in the vein of like Legends and Lattes. It's a cozy fantasy about a personal guard for the queen who like fled her position and is being hunted down for that. And the most powerful mage in the world have gotten together and they really want to like just lead a peaceful life together. And of course that doesn't happen. They get involved in pirate escapades and all sorts of things. I will say that this has a little bit more action than a lot of other cozy fantasies, which I enjoyed. I actually like that. So yeah, if you're looking for kind of a cozy fantasy, I really have been enjoying the Tomes in Tea series, and the third book in that series is coming out in 2025. All right, the sixth book I read and enjoyed is The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. J. Clark. This is about a group of dead assassins that go and do stuff, and it was really well done. It's a novella, and I'm going to leave it at that. Book 7 that I read and really enjoyed is The Brides of High Hill, which is the 5th book in the Singing Hill cycle by Ning Vo. This again follows our cleric into a different area, and I'm trying to remember exactly what this was about. As I said, it's been a while since I've read some of these, but I've really enjoyed all of those because they're very much stories about storytelling and how important it is. And I just enjoy the cleric, who is genderless and kind of just goes out to explore parts of the world and collect stories, and then usually runs into something a little bit crazy. So that was very well done. The next book I read and really enjoyed was The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands by Sarah Brooks. I know this one got mixed reviews, but I really loved it. It's about a collection of passengers who are on a train. It's kind of an alternate history. The Trans-Siberian Express, rather than it just being Trans-Siberian, it actually travels through this wasteland of horrific creatures and almost like a Lovecraftian type of vibe. Things are just really insane there. And as they go through the wasteland, they need to be very careful that the train doesn't get any breaches, or like the unrealities and craziness of the wastelands could infect the train. And I know some people's complaints were that most of this book takes place on the train, and that's true. There's kind of a mystery involved with, they think something that's not natural might be on the train, and they're trying to, it's kind of a whodunit mystery, very like almost Agatha Christie-esque. But they're trying to figure out who on the train might have done this and let this thing in, and they're worried about more of the train breaching, because as it goes through the years, the train gets more and more beat up. And you do end up at one point on the Wastelands, and I really, really loved how this ended. I thought it was so fun. But I honestly, it was one of my favorite books of the year, and I think it was just because it had that very like creepy eldritch horror Lovecraft vibe, and so the characters in the train are constantly under this tension, and we do get to visit that world, that wasteland as well, while trying to figure out like what characters are involved in causing things to go wrong. Anyways, I probably talked about that too. All right, ninth book I read and really enjoyed in 2024 is Wavewriter, which is the 9th book in the Amulet series, and finally tied that series up. That's by Kazuki Bushi. I've been waiting. I think I started reading these with my son when he was like, I don't know, 3 or 4, and he is now 17. So I've been waiting for this series to get done forever, and it's finally done, and it was very well done. No complaints at all. I actually went back through and I read the whole series before I read that book, which I would recommend doing, because there's a lot that goes on in there that you might not see as you go further in, or remember. At least I didn't remember, because I read too many different things. All right, the 10th book I read and really enjoyed in 2024 is The Burning God, which is the 3rd and final book in the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. Really enjoyed this whole series. Very well done historical fantasy. A lot of war and craziness, very brutal at times, but just a wonderful, wonderful kind of historical epic fantasy series. The 11th book I read and really enjoyed, The Grand Tour, which is the 2nd book in the Brass Queen by Elizabeth Chatsworth. This is a lesser known author that does steampunk books. I absolutely adored The Brass Queen, and Grand Tour was just as wonderful. It's about a young woman whose father did a lot of illegal steampunky weapons trading, and she's taken over his business. And that's kind of interesting, because young women shouldn't be doing these things. And she ends up in just a whole bunch of crazy adventures. The cast of characters, hilarious. Very funny, action-packed steampunk read, and you just don't find very many of those kind of pure steampunks that like hit everything that I'm interested in them hitting. There's an American cowboy involved who gets involved with her, so there's a lot of antics between like English society and American society and all of that, and it's just really, really well done. The next one I read and really enjoyed was The Stardust Grail by Yumi Kitase, and I probably said this wrong. I actually listened to this on audiobook. This is a science fiction story. It was very unique because it has a human woman who has formed a very tight relationship with another alien. They run a lot of, kind of a little bit shady jobs, but they're trying to be more on the up and up. She's at a university on Earth. The alien has been off doing its own thing. And when they get back together, she decides to go on one last run with this alien. And I think part of what made this book so special to me is it does a very good job of showing how humans and aliens could have very different just socioeconomics, and the way they just look at the world is very different. I feel like a lot of science fiction, like a lot of aliens look at the world the same way humans do in it. And this is a really good job of that. And it's hilarious. It's fast paced, has great characters. I just thought it was a wonderful package. I do want to go back and read Yumi Cattail, I hope I'm saying that right. It's other book as well, even though I've heard that's not quite as good as this one, and really, really looking forward to what she writes next, because that Stardust Grail was absolutely fantastic. Next book I read and really enjoyed, the 13th book, is A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. This was really well done. It's about the daughter of an evil sorceress, and her mom and her are forced to flee a village they've lived in for a long time. When one of her mom's schemes goes bad, they end up living in the household of a older man that her mom is trying to kind of seduce and take advantage of. But the household's not having none of it. And so this is another very funny, has some cozy fantasy vibes. I really enjoyed how the sorceress's daughter makes a really good situation for herself out of a really, really bad situation. So enjoyed that very much. In kind of a similar vein, number 14 was The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I did listen to this on audiobook as well. This is about a royal librarian who is forced to flee when a rebellion hits the city and the library is being burned and stuff. And she flees to an island where a lot of the islanders are suffering because magic has been banned, and she starts teaching them how to use magic again. And of course, this causes a lot of issues because magic is banned, and this ends up being very much, again, cozy fantasy vibes. There's a theme to that. I've had a very busy, somewhat stressful year, and so I'm gravitating towards a lot more like humorous and cozy fiction. All right. The next one I read, and the whole series of this could be on my favorite books, but I decided just to put one book on here. And this is book 15. That's Dungeon Crawler Carl. So Dungeon Crawler Carl, book 1 by Matt Denneman. This whole series is absolutely fantastic. I am trying to be good and wait to read the next book, which was released in November, but not going to be released in audiobook until February. So my family's been listening to these together on audiobook. These have been fantastic, like absolutely fantastic. They're kind of a post-apocalyptic science fiction fantasy dungeon crawler. I don't even know. It's pretty much indescribable, but hilarious, wonderful characters. The plot's amazing. World building is fantastic. Everything about Dungeon Crawler Carl is wonderful. And if you haven't read it, you should, because there's really nothing else like it out there. All right, the 16th book I read and really enjoyed was Fourth Wing, which is the first book in the Imperium series by Rebecca Yarros. This is a little bit more like typical young adult romantasy, but I think what really made it stand out for me is the character she's got some serious like physical issues that she's trying to get around to be what everybody wants her to be. There's some hilarious dragons in here. The romance is well done. It's very much that bad boy, not exactly what you initially think he is kind of thing that she goes for, but and I think the writing here is fantastic. Like, this is a long book and I breezed through it. It did not feel long. It was just a fun fantasy, like epic fantasy romp. I do, as I said though, I do think what really, really made the book for me was the dragons. The dragons are hilarious and cause a lot of chaos because they have their own society, but they're like bonded to humans, and it's just very, very funny. All right, the next book I read and really enjoyed, and both of these should be on here. I'm not sure why I only put one on here. This is number 17. That's Tomb of the Sun Kings, which is Raiders of the Arcana, book 1 by Jacqueline Vinson. I would actually put both books in this series that have been released so far, so both books in the Raiders of the Arcana series on here. They're both fantastic. This is very like Indiana Jones style, but like way better. So it features a woman who is working as in a university as a scholar. She is the only woman in her department. She is constantly getting, it's kind of set Victorian times, maybe a little bit past Victorian times, so like early 19th century, or yeah, 20th century, sorry. And she gets fired and finds an opportunity to kind of illegally acquire a treasure map, and which she does. And then she decides to go off on her own and try to find this treasure, which involves tomb raiding, trying to find and interact with the natives and everything else. And so it's very fun, like historical fantasy. I would say it's almost pure historical adventure or fiction, but there are some like magical realism elements that come into play, so some subtle magic. There's a little bit of a romance in here, but it's not like front and center. It's more adventure, tomb raiding and things like that. And I absolutely love books like that. So I really, really enjoyed this because I feel like they're very few and far between. All right. 18th book I read and really enjoyed on this list is The Last Hour Between Worlds, which is the first book in the Echo Archives by Melissa Caruso. This was just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the character's background and then the world. So the main character in here is on maternity leave. She decides to take a break from the baby, go back to a work party. Unfortunately, at the work party, somebody is doing something to kill everybody. But in this world, there's a prime layer, which is the main reality, a prime reality. And then you can drop through reality to other layers of realities, of parallel realities. And so she finds herself being dropped into another layer, another parallel reality, where now everybody's alive again. And this, it's kind of a what is going on, who done. She has to figure out who is killing all these people and who is dropping this whole party through different parallel realities and how that all works out. Very interesting system of like gods and things like that. It's really well done. I thought the characters were fun. There's a little bit of a romance, but again, it's kind of way back. It's not front and center. And it was really interesting how they have, a brand new mother trying to deal with that and then getting thrown back into this crazy situation where she's dropping through parallel realities. So I really, really enjoyed it. I think that one got kind of mixed reviews too, but I just thought it was so creative and so interesting. All right, number 19 is The Undermining of Twyla and Frank, which is the second book in the Heart and Mercy series by Megan Bannon. This could again fall into that kind of cozy fantasy vibes. Although these worlds are a little bit brutal that these characters put in the first one in Heart and Mercy, there was like a lot of undead that they're constantly fighting, and Mercy was an undertaker and Heart was a hunter of the undead. In this one, it follows Twyla and Frank, who are both guards that used to protect people from the undead, but given the situation in the first book, they don't have that as a job anymore, and instead they find out that dragons exist, and they end up going on an adventure to kind of find out where these dragons are coming from and find out if they need to protect people from them. This one is romance heavy, very cute romance between older people, so they're in their 50s. So it involves a lot of family, a lot of, balancing life balance things, also adventure and excitement. So really, really love that. I thought it was just a very good balance of a lot of fun elements. And then the last one I read and really enjoyed, book 20, is A Non-Comprehensive Guide to Sea Serpents, which is the first book in the Sorcerers Grimoire series by A.J. Sherwood. This is, there's 2 books out in this so far. They were both very, very good. I thought very cozy fantasy vibes, a lot about like making a non-traditional family when you don't have a family. It's about a sorcerer, a very powerful sorcerer who rescues a boy who also has magic and his brother. And he's trying to deal now with being a relatively young man himself in his 20s and having 2 preteen boys in the house. There's a lot about family, a lot about, kind of taking care of each other. And also they hunt down sea serpents and end up in this kind of plot where some evil sorcerers are trying to prevent them from getting into this cave. So I thought it was, again, a wonderful blend of like some cozy fantasy elements, a lot of family, romance, adventure, magic, cool monsters, things like that. So I enjoyed it. These are short too, so they're just kind of a nice, light, fun, feel good read, a lot of humor in them. So very much enjoyed that. And that's kind of the theme of the year for me. I was looking for a lot of humor and a lot of, people just being nice to each other and like some adventure and magic and a lot of that cozy feel. So yeah, a lot of that this year. As I said, it's been a year, like we've had a lot going on. So anyway, I can take a little vacation by reading is wonderful. So those are the top 20 books I read in 2024. Would love to see comments from people about their favorite books of 2024 and learn about those. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I will be following this up with a top 10 new to me authors I read in 2024, and a lot of those were on this list. But always eager to hear about what people are loving. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you have a great month of reading ahead of you, and I will talk to you later. Bye.